The knock caught me completely off guard. I just finished a call with investors, a massive $800,000 deal that would let me hire a team, scale my agency nationally. I walked to the door, expecting a delivery, maybe my new work laptop, but standing there, on my brand new doorstep in Austin, Texas, was Chloe. And in her hand? That same damn suitcase she'd walked out with 2 years earlier. Her makeup was smudged, hair pulled back in a messy bun, like she'd been crying for hours. She didn't wait to be invited in, just started talking, a torrent of words about how Alexander had broken up with her. He'd called her too demanding, too high maintenance, and she'd realized, standing here now, that she'd made a horrible mistake leaving me. I just stood in the doorway, my hand still on the knob, listening. She went through what sounded like a perfectly rehearsed speech about second chances, about how money doesn't buy happiness. She couldn't have known. She couldn't have known that the Daniel she'd left 2 years ago, the guy making a decent $78,000, grinding on side projects in a modest apartment, wasn't standing here anymore. I was running an agency projected to hit $3 million this year. I'd just put a down payment on a house, and I was seeing someone new, a woman named Sophia who ran her own successful consulting firm and certainly didn't need me to fund her lifestyle. But Chloe was still operating on old information, thinking I was probably single, probably struggling, and would be grateful she'd come back. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she talked, like she was doing me a favor by giving me another shot. It was almost 2 years to the day when she first used that line on me. We'd been together for 3 years, the last 18 months living in a comfortable 2-bedroom place. I was a digital marketing manager, making good, stable money. Chloe worked part-time at a boutique, always talking about career courses but never really finishing them. I drove a 2018 Mazda 6, paid most of the bills, and spent my evenings building a side consulting business. I wanted more than just a steady paycheck. She, on the other hand, loved expensive brunches, designer bags, trips to Sonoma Valley. I didn't mind covering most of it because I thought we were building a future. But then, the small things started. They build slowly, you know? The kind of things you notice but try to tell yourself you're overreacting to. She'd come home from networking events at 11 at night, smelling of cologne that was definitely not mine. If I asked about it, she'd get defensive, call me paranoid. She started talking more and more about the successful men she'd meet, the luxury cars they drove, how they really invested in themselves. My buddy, Ben, he saw it early. "Bro," he'd say, "she's shopping around. You're just the safety net." I loved her, so I brushed it off. I was working 12 to 14-hour days, pouring everything into my future, and she'd complain I wasn't present enough, even though my hard work paid for the lifestyle she wanted. The night it all changed, I should have seen it coming. I got home around 8, Thai food in hand, her favorite. She was sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, a serious, almost rehearsed expression on her face. I knew before she even spoke that this was planned. "Daniel," she started, "we need to talk." I set the food down, sat across from her. She went into a whole speech about how she'd been doing a lot of thinking, how we wanted different things. I was safe and stable, but she needed someone who matched her ambition, who could provide the lifestyle she deserved without her having to worry about money. Then came the line I'll never forget. She looked me right in the eye, utterly earnest, and said, "I think we're better as friends." I sat there for a second, processing. And then it hit me, something that probably should have months earlier: she wasn't leaving me because we weren't compatible. She was leaving me because she'd found someone with more money, and she was trying to make it sound noble. I could have argued, pleaded, promised to work less, or make more, or whatever she wanted to hear. Instead, I just said, "Okay, if that's what you want." She blinked at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Her face went from serious to confused, then almost angry. She clearly expected me to fight, to break down, to give her that dramatic movie moment where the guy realizes what he's losing. Instead, I asked her, completely calm, if she needed help packing, or if she had somewhere to go. She said she'd stay with a friend, come back for her stuff over the weekend. I told her that was fine, I'd make sure I wasn't home so it wouldn't be awkward. The confusion on her face deepened, turning into frustration, maybe disappointment. She grabbed her pre-packed suitcase from the bedroom and left without another word. I sat in the quiet apartment, the Thai food getting cold. And instead of sadness, I felt this weird sense of relief, like a weight I hadn't even known I was carrying had been lifted. That night, I calculated exactly how much I'd been spending on her monthly rent, food, entertainment, trips. About $1,400. Money that would now go back into my business. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. Ben called, expecting me to be a mess. But I told him I was fine. I threw myself into my work, my day job, my consulting. Within 2 weeks, I landed my first major client, a $15,000 project. I remember looking at the contract, thinking, losing her might genuinely be the best financial decision of my life. Chloe texted a few times, asking how I was, hoping we could still be friends. My responses were short, polite, completely devoid of emotion. I'm good. Hope you're well. Just like you'd text a coworker. And I could tell by her constant attempts to extend the conversations, this wasn't what she expected either. Ben would show me her Instagram sometimes, pictures at fancy restaurants, designer bags, Alexander Hayes' arm around her. I didn't follow her. I didn't care. I was too busy building something real, something that was mine, something no one could take away by deciding I wasn't ambitious enough. Her new life with Alexander Hayes unfolded quickly. Within a month, she went from boutique work to full-time Instagram influencer, her entire feed a montage of expensive things her new boyfriend bought her. From splitting appetizers to omakase dinners, from saving for one designer bag to a growing collection. Ben, ever the pragmatist, put it bluntly, she just traded one ATM for a bigger one. She'd found exactly what she said she wanted. About 3 months after the breakup, Chloe started reaching out again, subtly. Late-night texts saying she missed our conversations, remember when messages about old memories. My responses stayed the same, short, polite, emotionally detached. Yeah, that was nice. Hope you're doing well. I wasn't being mean, I was just treating her exactly like what she'd asked to be, a friend. But it clearly wasn't sitting right with her, because the messages grew more frequent, more pointed. Then came the 1 a.m. call from a club, music blasting, her words slurred. She was out with Alexander, but bored, thinking about me. I was in bed, actually getting decent sleep. When she finally paused, I told her she should probably go back to her date, and I hoped she had a good night. Then I hung up. Ben thought it was hilarious. Money doesn't buy personality, he chuckled. The real shift for me happened around month 6. I landed a contract that changed everything, handle an entire digital marketing strategy, $80,000 upfront, plus bonuses. They wanted me on retainer for the next year. 2 weeks later, I quit my day job. I moved to a better apartment in a nicer part of Austin. Suddenly, I wasn't the guy grinding in the shadows, I was the guy people in my industry were talking about. My income basically tripled overnight. That's when Chloe started showing up. Too frequent to be coincidence. I'd be at a coffee shop I'd never been to before, and she'd walk in 10 minutes later, feigning surprise. Or at a networking event, she'd appear with Alexander, making sure to chat like old friends. She'd compliment my new watch, my new clothes, ask about work in a way that felt like she was fishing for information about my income. Alexander would stand there, bored, checking his phone. I'd keep everything surface level, then excuse myself. Ben started calling her a financial stalker. And honestly, it wasn't far off. The most glaring incident, she somehow found out which gym I joined and suddenly had a membership, showing up during my exact workout times. After the 3rd time, I switched gyms entirely, paid extra for a membership across town, just to avoid the awkwardness. It was so transparent. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of me I was becoming, the one with money and success, who could give her validation without relying entirely on Alexander. I was supposed to be stuck where she left me, the safe backup option. But I'd upgraded myself. And that wasn't part of her plan. So, here she was again, on my doorstep with that suitcase. My phone rang. It was Ben, loud enough for her to hear, talking about the $800,000 investor deal and asking if I'd picked up the Mercedes yet. I watched Chloe's face change in real time, the recognition that something fundamental had shifted. When I hung up, she asked directly if what Ben said was true, if my business was really worth that much. I told her honestly, it was doing well, better than I'd expected. The energy flipped. Suddenly, she wasn't apologetic, she was practically vibrating with a manic energy, talking about how she'd always believed in me, how she knew I'd be successful, how we could be so good together now. She started touching my arm, leaning in, saying Alexander never truly understood her, and money didn't matter anymore because she'd learned what was really important. I just stood there, watching this performance. This complete transformation from sad and desperate to calculated and opportunistic. And I realized she hadn't learned anything at all. She hadn't learned that money doesn't matter. She just learned that I had more of it now. And that made me valuable again in her eyes. I told her straight up that I appreciated her coming by, but I wasn't interested in revisiting what we had. I'd moved on, and I was happy with where my life was now. She tried to argue, said I was being unfair, everyone deserved a second chance, she'd changed and grown. I pointed out that she'd shown up with that suitcase the same day Alexander dumped her. If she'd really changed, she would have reached out months ago, when I was still in my old apartment, not right after finding out about my success. She got defensive, her voice rising, accusing me of twisting things, saying this had nothing to do with money. So I asked her directly, if I'd still been making $78,000 and driving the Mazda, would you be standing here right now with that suitcase? She couldn't answer. Just stood there, mouth opening and closing. Then she started crying again, but this time it felt different, angrier. She accused me of being cruel, of holding grudges, of never really loving her if I could shut her out like this. I stayed calm. I'm not shutting you out, I said. I'm just treating you exactly like what you asked to be 2 years ago. A friend. And friends don't move in together. Friends don't get back together after messy breakups. She laughed, a bitter sound. Said I was being petty, and I'd regret this. I told her I'd found real connection with someone who didn't need me to prove my worth with a bank statement. That was the final straw. She grabbed her suitcase and told me I'd changed, and not in a good way. Ben showed up about 10 minutes later. He'd arrived just as she started yelling and had actually recorded part of it from the hallway. We watched it back. It was surreal, seeing myself stay so composed while she spiraled. He said I'd handled it perfectly. That some people only value you when they think you're valuable to others, and Chloe had shown exactly who she was twice now. Once when she left, and once when she tried to come back. 6 months later, my business hit $3.2 million in revenue. I moved into my house, picked up a Mercedes E-Class, and Sophia and I are planning a trip to Europe. I heard through mutual friends that Chloe had moved back in with her parents, was working at a call center, posting vague things online about finding herself. I didn't feel bad for her, and I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt grateful. Grateful she'd left when she did. Grateful I'd never begged her to stay. Grateful that sometimes, the trash really does take itself out, giving you the space to build something better than you ever could have with dead weight holding you back. When you focus on building yourself instead of chasing validation from people who already dismissed you, you create a life that attracts the right people naturally. The ones who left for the wrong reasons become irrelevant, not because you're bitter, but because you genuinely moved on to something better. What would you have done in my situation?